Now let's go over question number 844, backspace string compare. Given two strings, S and T, return true if they are equal. So we're going to return true if they are equal when both are typed into empty string editors. This symbol, sharp, means a backspace character. So this is deleting one character. Now let's look at our example 1. So we have our string 1 and string 2. And you can see that we have AB sharp C, and then the next one is AD sharp C. And remember that when we have a sharp, it means it's a backspace. So we delete this previous character. And when we have a sharp here, that means that we're going to delete again. So we have AC for the first one and AC for the second one. And since they're equal to each other, we return true. And let's look at another example. Well, we have A and B, sharp, sharp. Sharp means backspace, so we big backspace twice. That means we get rid of A and B, and we have an empty string. Next one is also C sharp, D sharp. We get rid of C, we get rid of our D. So we have our empty string and they're equal to each other, so we return true. And let's look at our example that returns false. Okay, example 4. We have A and C and B. Well, we have a sharp over here, so we get rid of this A. And B does not have any backspaces. Well, we have C and B for this. Well, are they equal to each other? No, right? So this is going to return false. So for this one, we just have to get rid of one character each time we have a backspace. Try to implement that and come back to the video when you need help. If you guys find this helpful, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Thanks. Now let's try to implement our first solution. Our first solution is going to have a time complexity of O of n plus m and space of n plus m. We're going to be iterating through the first character number of times plus second character number of times. So say that O of n represents the first string and O of m represents the second one. And space is going to be O of n plus m also, because we're going to create two variables where we store our output for each respective strings, and then later finally we're going to just compare those two and see if they're the same thing. So let's create our two outputs for our string S and T, and let's just call it output S for the first one, and let's call it output T for the second one. Now what we'll do is we will iterate through all the characters in our string, and each time we get a sharp, this sharp sign, we're going to delete one character. And if it's not a sharp character, if it is a actual character, we're just going to push it into our respective output. So let's do that. So to do that, we are going to use a for loop. Let's do for let I is equal to 0, and we will take care of our first string. So that's going to be I is less than string.length, and we increment by 1 each time. Okay, that looks good. And we have to check, well, if our current string is equal to a sharp, well, what do we have to do? Well, we have to get rid of a string in our output array, right? And how can we get rid of a string at the back? Well, we can use pop, right? So we'll do output s dot pop. So this way we are getting rid of our character when we have a sharp. Otherwise, what are we going to do else? We're going to push in that character. So output dot push, and we push in our current character, which is string at index I. All right, that looks good. And let's try running our code. And this should be output s. And let's just console log our output s. So here you can see that we have our string. So for the first one, you can see that we have A and C. Second one, we have nothing because we had two sharps. Last one, we have C because, well, A backspace backspace. When we have two backspaces and only one character, the second one is not really going to remove anything. So we have our C here, and then last one is A sharp C, which is going to return only C because we delete our A. So that looks good. So we need to handle our other string, and this one is actually going to look exactly the same. So let's just copy this, paste it, let's change it a little. This should be T, this should be T also, and this should be T also. And we need to change our output. Our output is going to be capital T, and let's change over here. And let's console log our second output, which is output T. And you can see that we have our result here. Now we need to be able to compare these two and check if they are of the same thing. If not, we want to return false. If they are, we want to return true. So first, let's just return. And we have to convert our array into a string. So in order to do that, we can use .join and we check if this is equal to the other string. So that's going to be output. And here you can see that we got our result. So true, true, and last one is false. Now, I think this problem was kind of easy compared to other ones, but still, let's go over it. Now again, our time and space complexity is of n plus m, where n, let's say, represents s and m is t. We created two variables, our output s and output t. And for the first loop, we iterate to the first string with the string s. And if our current element is equal to sharp, we're going to get rid of the last character that's in our output. Otherwise, we're going to add our current character. So let's see our output. So this is S and this is T. And let's just look at our example 1. Well, our first character for the first one is A, so we add it. Second one is B, so we add it. And third one is sharp. So sharp is get rid of the last character. So we get rid of our B. And C, we add it to our output. So we have A and C. Let's look at T. We have our character A, we have our character D, and we have a sharp. So that means that we want to get rid of the last element. And finally, we have our C. So we have A and C. Are they equal to each other? So if they're equal to each other, we return true. If not, we return false. So this is actually the overall logic. Well, just one thing is that we convert our array AC into a string, our string T into a string, and then we compare those two strings. Now let's go over our second solution. It's going to have a better time and space complexity. Well, actually space is going to be the same, but time is going to be better. It's going to be O of max of n or m. So whatever is longer. So if you were to look at our last example, we have 3 characters for this one and 1 character for this one. So it will be the maximum number of characters, which is 3. So that's going to be O of n. And if it was the case that this was longer, it would obviously be O of m. Now, the logic is actually exactly the same. The code is actually going to be exactly the same. It's just that we do one loop instead of 2 individual loops. So same as before, let's create our variable output s, and this is going to be an array. And same thing, output t, which is going to be an array also. Now we're going to create our loop, and we're going to start at index I, and we're going to loop until, well, this is the only difference part. We're going to do math.max, and we push in or add 2 things: length of the first character or string, length of the second character or string, and we increment by 1 each time. So after you see this, you get why it's O of max of n or m, right? So this is going to loop for the length of the longer string. Now we just have our if cases. So if string at index I is equal to sharp, well, what do? We pop, right? So output s.pop. Now we need our other one. So let's do t this time. So if our character for t is sharp, we also pop. And we need our other cases. Let's just actually copy this. So if string s is not equal to sharp, what we do is we just simply add into our output. Well, that's going to be output s. So we change this to s, and we add in our current character, string at index I. Now we need our other case when it's not sharp for our character t. We want to add it to our output t, and you want to add the current character. And finally, we do the same thing, output s.join. Well, is this equal to output t.join? And we have to actually return this. So that's going to be return. And we made a spelling mistake. This should be output. So as you can see, we have the same exact result. It just, we had one loop and our if cases are pretty much the same. Our last return statement is the same. We created 2 respective output array, and we pop if it's equal to sharp. If it's not, we add it to our respective arrays. And finally, compare the 2 to get our result. Now let's try to implement another solution. So this is going to have time and space is going to be O of n. Now the code is actually going to be really the same. So let's breeze through this. So first thing we do is create a variable named output, and we store our output here obviously, but we want to create a function, and let's just call it new string, and this is going to take in a string, and let's bring our output over here. Now what we want is we want to iterate through our elements. So I is equal to 0, and we're going to be given a string. So that's going to be I is less than string.length. Let's just rename this to avoid confusion. Let's name it to just string. So whatever string is passed in there is going to run this function. And let's increment by 1 each time. Now we have to do our same checks. So if our current string is equal to sharp, what do? We want to pop. We want to get rid of our last character. Now what if it's the other case? So else, what we do is we add it to our output. So that's going to be the current character. And finally, we want to return the output, which is a string. So we join to make it into a string. All right, that looks good. And we just have to run this 2 times. So that's going to be return. We run our new string function and pass in our first character or first string, and we run it again. And we pass in our second string, which is t. And you can see that we get our result, true, 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 and false. So everything again is exactly the same. It's just that we ran it each time, so in a different function, and we just compared the result of those two to get our result. If you guys find this helpful, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Thanks.